It's 1997. Sarah Michelle Gellar is making Sunnydale a safer place, slaying one vampire at a time. And you're taking care of your new very realistic virtual pet. Honda's rolling out their first in-house built SUV, and it was built on the Civic Integra platform. The 97 debut model year comfortable runabout vehicle came in only one trim, and in North America at least, did not yet feature a clock. So that's an easy way to tell a 97 apart from all subsequent model years if it has a blank here instead of a clock. The one-size-fits-all 97 CRV pretty much just came one way. Equipped with a 4-cylinder B-Series, a 4-speed auto, and real-time all-wheel drive. Power windows, door locks, cruise control, air conditioning, dual airbags, and a cassette player were all standard equipment. The only option was a $1,000 package that added ABS and alloy wheels. There were a few dealer-installed options you could purchase, like a hood deflector, roof rack, or hard spare tire cover. Cigarette lighters were on the way out by the late 90s, but the CRV featured not one, but two power outlets. One up front where you'd expect to see it, and a second one in the rear, which I remember being quite the novelty back in 2000 when my parents bought a lease return 98 CRV, the first Honda my family ever owned. I remember thinking it was pretty cool to have a power outlet in the back. That was not common back then. At least not for entry-level peasants like us. Speaking of the tailgate, a full-size spare hung off the rear door which opened sideways, separately from the glass. The glass, which could be released from a button inside the dash, opened upwards. But if that doesn't impress you, all CRVs came standard with a picnic table. The table doubled as your cargo floor, and underneath it, where a conventional spare would normally be, was a waterproof storage compartment which actually could be used as a cooler. Now, some may call this a gimmick, but I say, who wouldn't want to eat lunch like this?
Accurate advice, can't you just plan ahead and bring a folding table with you?
Absolutely not.
Why would I want to waste cargo space hauling around a table? Besides, what else are you going to use this space for? A hybrid battery?
Absolutely not.
Plus, now you'll always have somewhere to lay out your parts and bolts on when you're working on the engine. Not that you'd have to work on this car very often though. It's B-Series powered and therefore very reliable. It's essentially an Integra engine with a Civic EX intake, but internally the block has a larger 3.3-inch bore compared to the Integra, making this B-Series a 2-liter. The extra displacement gives the CRV more torque compared to the Integra, 133 foot-pounds compared to the Integra's 127. It's not really that much of a jump really, especially when you consider that horsepower on the CRV is actually less than the Integra's 142 number at just 126. This lower horsepower number compared to the Integra is mostly due to a lower compression ratio and the different intake. It's admittedly a little underpowered in my opinion. I actually learned to drive on my parents' 98 CRV and let me tell you, you weren't winning any races. But the CRV is extremely fuel efficient and it basically just feels like driving a car, except for the fairly high ground clearance and rather unaerodynamic design that can produce a lot of wind noise and kind of blow you all over the highway on a stormy day. But we definitely did appreciate that ground clearance and very well functioning real-time all-wheel drive system in the winter. These things are great in the snow. Exterior styling is nothing extravagant, but it looks nice enough, and the nearly wrap-around rear glass gives the CRV incredible vision. You see, this was back in the day when they actually built cars you could see out of, which is why we didn't used to need rear view or 360-degree cameras, blind spot monitors, cabin watch monitors. They're even making cars with cameras in place of side view mirrors now. Doesn't anybody know how to turn their head anymore? Well, no, actually, unless it's to look down at a device. Thanks a lot, Shannon. See what happens when you gigapet and drive?
If you want your giga to grow bigger, you gotta figure how to care for your giga.
Baby want to play.
Absolutely not.
Inside, the CRV is very roomy. A column-mounted shifter frees up floor space, although they could have freed up even more space if they'd done a pedal-style e-brake, but I assume they went this way because it's cheaper and they were able to share more components with Civics and Integras. There is a tray with drink holders where a center console would be on a car that can be folded down when not in use, and the driver's seat featured an armrest. Not the passenger though, that was out of budget. My only complaint about the interior is I never found the seats very comfortable, but other than that, it's very well laid out and very roomy. And the cargo space is amazing. The rear seats fold down nearly flat. To quote a Car and Driver article from 1999, two all teenagers set to inherit a CRV when they turn 16, the front and rear seats fold nearly flat, so you can You know, take a nap after all that studying.
Absolutely not.
Studying that can be easily accomplished with the use of the CRV's built-in table. No table seats left in the library? No excuse, boy. Unfold that CRV table and get studying. The gauge cluster is a Civic gauge cluster with some orange graphics and amber bulbs. You can actually interchange these clusters with Civics and ELs, and the steering wheel will fit on Civics, ELs, and Preludes. I did always find the door lock and window controls a little funny on these. On all doors except the driver's, this is the power window switch, but on the driver's door it's the power lock switch, and it's actually the only power lock switch in the car. The passengers can only lock and unlock their doors manually. The window controls for the driver are on the dash to the left of the steering wheel. Have you ever noticed this random blank on the front passenger door and wondered what it's for? Well, on JDM models, that's actually where the hatch glass release button is. But for some reason they didn't just move the switch to the other door for left-hand drive models, they shoved it down towards the bottom of the dash. The Americans can reach for the hatch button, and we're not giving them these cool side graphics either. There were actually several fairly significant changes for the 98 model year. First of all, there were now two trims, the base model, now known as LX, and the higher EX trim. EX models added ABS and alloy wheels as standard, had body-colored mirrors and door handles, came with a CD player instead of a cassette, and had keyless entry, which was extra cool because on the EX models with keyless entry, the rear glass could be popped by holding the option button on the remote. All 98 models had a clock, which are very faulty by the way, they always fail, but you can fix them by resoldering the internals. Also for 98, a manual transmission option was added, and you could opt for front wheel drive if you didn't want all wheel drive. The manuals are out there, but definitely pretty rare, but if you can find one, that is the one you want. Not just because manuals are cool, but because in true late 90s, early 2000s Honda fashion, the auto transmissions often die. They're not as bad as like TLs or Odysseys or the automatic Preludes. These ones you can usually get about 200,000 miles out of them or so, but these engines will run forever. So if you get a manual, you're set. You'll probably still be driving it in another 20 years, long after all the 2025 CRVs are rotting away in junkyards with blow-in head gaskets. More changes came along for 1999. And I think this was the best update because they addressed that lack of power I was talking about. A higher compression ratio and revised intake manifold bumped up power to 148. Redline was up to 6,800 RPM from 6,500. These specs are a little more what I would expect to see out of a 2-liter non-VTEC B-Series. There were also some interior revisions for 99. The fabric pattern on the seats was changed. I definitely like the new fabric better. The old fabric was like one of those pictures you look into that makes your eyes see weird things. Cup holders were added to the rear door pockets. Automatic transmission models had a different column shifter which now featured an overdrive cancel button. The climate control knobs were changed from light gray to black, and instrument lights were added to the window switches. But only the driver's window switches. And only the window switches for the driver that don't control his own window. I don't know, I guess that fourth bulb would have just put the car over budget. For 2000, a special edition trim was added which finally gave the CRV body-colored bumpers, as well as leather interior, a CD cassette combo audio unit, a hard spare tire cover, and a little chrome accent on the bottom of the grille. The leather's nice, but I really like the body-colored bumpers. That makes the CRV look a lot better. I am not a fan of black plastic. The only big downside to the SE model was it was automatic only. The first gen CRV was a smash hit. It sold extremely well and finally gave Honda their own SUV at a time when SUVs were really taking over the market. Had the first gen CRV flopped, Honda's story could have been very different. It's one of the most practical Hondas you can buy. It's got a B series, all-wheel drive, a stick is available for all but the 97 model year. I don't think I've ever met somebody that's owned one of these and not liked it, but let me know what you think. Before we jump into the second generation, and instead of a mid-roll ad, I'm going to give a quick shout out to emanualonline, who have partnered with the channel to offer Accurate Advice viewers discounts on service manuals for those of you who like to do your own wrenching like me. emanualonline.com is an extensive online database of factory service manuals. Simply go to their site, search your make and model, and it's as easy as that. They kindly sent me one for my Integra and my EM1, so two B-Series powered cars, and both of them are complete scans of the original Honda Acura factory manuals in the form of searchable PDFs, which is really handy. The best part is using my discount code Acura-Advice22 will get you 22% off everything on the site, and purchasing a service manual via my referral link in the video description helps support my channel. So if you do need a manual for your project and decide to buy it through my referral link, I really appreciate it and thank you in advance. Now let's jump into the second generation. It's 2002 and there's a brand new CRV on the scene, running on Honda's new Civic RSX platform. This new CRV now has McPherson struts up front and a K-series under the hood. Trims are still LX and EX, and there's still automatic and manual transmissions available, though most buyers went for the auto. And most were sold with all-wheel drive, though front-wheel drive was still available on the LX trim. But before we dive into the new powertrain, let's take a look at the new styling. The front bumper now extends up and around the grille and meets up with the hood. On the back, the long high mounted taillights are similar, but instead of stopping at the bottom of the glass, they now go all the way down. Well, not all the way down, but they extend down significantly further until they meet up with the top of the rear bumper, which is now growing upward, covering over more of the car with black plastic like a species of invasive ivy. The interior is still very roomy and practical. Like before, there are storage compartments all over the place, and the new CRV retains its externally mounted full-size spare tire, picnic table, and waterproof storage compartment. Automatic transmission models now have the gear selector mounted up on the dash instead of on the steering column, and to free up more floor space, the e-brake handle has been moved up onto the dash as well. Kind of in a weird, but I guess creative location. It's integrated into the front dash, kind of camouflaged to match the grab handle it mirrors on the passenger side. I've always thought this looks a little weird, but from a functionality standpoint, it is a better location. The first gens, you really have to reach down from the relatively high seat to pull up the e-brake, as it lays pretty much flat on the floor. This e-brake is in a perfect spot for e-skids actually, nice and close to the steering wheel and easy to grab. You can't do that in a modern car. With the rear seats folded down, the second-gen CRV can fit two full-size mountain bikes with wheels on, something few, if any, other SUVs can accommodate in this class. I find the new seats a little bit more comfortable and supportive, and the seats can still be folded into date-night configuration. The rear glass can still open separately from the door if desired, but the tailgate now runs the full length up and around the glass, meaning the whole thing now opens as one piece, still to the side. This means that the door can now be opened fully in one motion, instead of having to raise the glass first and then swinging the door open, which I suppose some would see as an improvement and more practical. I don't know though, I kinda liked that the hatch glass opened upwards and you were able to stand under it with the door open while loading things on a first gen. It keeps the rain off you. LX models come with all the same power options as before, plus a CD cassette player combo. The EX trim adds ABS, alloy wheels, a power moonroof, something that was not available at all on the first gen, side airbags, and a 6-speaker sound system with a 6 CD in-dash changer. EX models also add body-colored mirrors like before, but not door handles this time. They've been overtaken by that invasive black plastic. The gauge cluster is Honda's standard early 2000s 4-dial design, and backlighting was still amber. The rear drum brakes are gone, and all CRVs now have 4-wheel disc brakes. The new 2.4-liter K-series engine makes 160 horsepower with 162 pound-feet of torque, and thanks to its intelligent VTEC system and variable timing control, it still retains the same fuel economy as before, despite the displacement increase. These K-series engines are great and can last a long time with relatively little maintenance, as long as you don't run them low on oil and stretch the chain. You see, K-series timing chains are tensioned hydraulically by a tensioner that relies on oil pressure. But more on that later, because this actually becomes a pretty big issue a few generations down the line. These ones are actually pretty forgiving. There weren't any significant changes for North American cars for 03 or 04, but updates for 2005 changed the rear turn signal lenses to clear, swapped out the 1-bar grille for a 2-bar, and revised the front headlight assemblies as well. Mechanically, Mechanically, there were some changes. The throttle cables were swapped out for an electronic drive-by-wire system, and the automatic transmission was upgraded from a 4-speed to a 5-speed. Traction control and vehicle stability assist, as well as front seat, side, and side curtain airbags were all added as standard equipment. The Special Edition trim also came back for 05, bringing with it the body-colored bumpers again, and finally gave us back those body-colored door handles as well. But I really don't like that. When a manufacturer takes something away from a trim package and then adds it back in a higher trim package to try and force you to buy a higher end model.
Floor mats, keys.
Keys?
I gotta start it.
The SE model did also come with leather again, this time with a leather-wrapped steering wheel and heated front seats and heated mirrors, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately though, once again, the Special Edition was automatic only. Overall, the 2nd Gen CRV was a pretty good follow-up to the first. It retained pretty much all of the cool and unique features and received a pretty significant and needed increase in power. Personally, I don't like the aesthetics as much, but I suppose that's a personal taste thing. They're still pretty reliable, but I don't think there's any question that this was a better platform than this. Some may try to debate that in the comments, but that's how I feel anyways. But hey, maybe I'm a little biased. It's 2007 and suddenly everyone has a cell phone. In just a few short years since the introduction of the 2nd gen, cell phones had become mainstream and texting was quickly becoming everyone's primary method of communication. By 2007, SUVs had really taken over the market. By now, they drove so much like cars that everyone just used them as cars. SUVs were getting used less and less for camping and more for coffee runs. Oh man, look how busy it is in there. No way I'm getting a seat. Hey, bad news, man. There's no tables left.
That's no problem. I'll just pull out my picnic table. You're in a CRV. Don't you have one too?
Well, not exactly.
Hey, where's your full-size spare? Did they move it underneath like a truck?
No, it's a donut.
A donut? Hey, everyone. This guy doesn't even have a full-size spare in his fancy new SUV.
I don't know why I thought that would get a reaction.
Nobody here knows how to change a tire.
Hello, it's the 21st century. That's what roadside assistance is. Oh, what the? Shannon, not again. See what happens when you text and drive?
Hello, roadside?
She did it again. You heard that right. The new for 07 CRV lost both its picnic table and its full-size spare. The tailgate is the traditional type now. It opens upwards and the glass is now fixed. No more opening the window separately. Honda says this new tailgate improves aesthetics, adds to the new CRV's clean lines, and improves garageability. I say it's cost-cutting. The new CRV is also slightly lower, which improves the ride, wind noise, handling, and efficiency, but again this is another sign of its leaning into its new role as a grocery hauler crossover. Most models are still real-time all-wheel drive, and admittedly for 90% of the population, that's all they need. It'll get you through most winters, and it's undoubtedly a reliable and practical daily. Sales numbers reflected this. For 2007, it was the 2nd best-selling SUV in Canada behind the Ford Escape and was the best-selling SUV in the US for 2008. I think these were the right car at the right time. Honda was fresh off a lot of success thanks to their 90s cars, and therefore the company had a very positive and reliable image, which helped these sell so well. I don't think much credit can be given to the marketing department, as the ad campaign looks like something that a student threw together at midnight 8 hours before the project was due. Let's pretend the CRV is like food and people crave it. What if the CRV was like popcorn?
Oh, that's good shit, bro. We're doing that.
I am starving.
There are 3 trims right out of the gate this time: LX, EX, and EXL. Over the LX model, the EX adds alloy wheels, a chrome grille, variable speed intermittent wipers, steering wheel mounted audio controls, a 3rd power outlet in the center tray, this rear cargo shelf, an upgraded audio system, and an exterior temperature display. The EXL trim adds a leather interior with heated front seats, body-colored heated mirrors, a fixed center console instead of a fold-down tray, and a navigation system could be added as an additional option package. Inside, the new gauge cluster features 2 2 large dials for your tach and speedo, and a center display screen that shows things like odometer, fuel, temp, a little graphic that shows you which doors are open, and a few other things. The gear selector is still technically on the dash, but it's in a much more natural location. Simple and easy to use climate controls reside behind it. Like the second gen, the rear seats still tilt up forwards to make for a large, flat cargo area. They can also slide forwards now, an adjustment that wasn't previously available, but they can't be folded into some of the more fun configurations anymore. Under the hood is still a K-Series, now the K24Z1. Rated at 166 horsepower and 161 pound-feet of torque, this may seem almost the same as the previous gen, but we have to account for the fact that the new SAE horsepower rating standard took effect in 2006, so the previous generation numbers I told you were calculated on the old system. Converting those numbers to the new rating standard shows that for 2007, the CRV is actually up by 10 horsepower and torque is up by 1. This version of the K24 is really reliable. I can't even think of any pattern failures for it. These ones just work. The transmission is a 5-speed automatic. Was there a manual?
Absolutely not.
Oh, so it wasn't enough to steal my picnic table and full-size spare. Honda had to go and take away my stick shift too, but in their defense, barely anyone was buying the manual CRVs when they were making them, so you can't really blame them. Any business is only going to produce what sells. In some markets where more of the population actually still drives manuals, you could get these with a stick. The mid-model refresh came for the 2010 model year. There are new wheels, the front and rear bumpers are a little different, the rear reflectors and fog light cutouts are now in the painted part of the bumper, and it actually looks like this time they reduced the amount of black plastic, which I appreciate. The lower part of the grille is now honeycomb style instead of horizontal lines, which is a funny thing I've noticed from making all these videos that Honda repeatedly does to change the grille for mid-model run updates. They did it in the 70s, they did it in the 2000s, and they're still doing it in the 2020s. This CRV was one of the first Honda models to switch from using regular 520 oil to 020 synthetic, which is what virtually all their cars use now. The updated synthetic oil K-Series has a higher compression ratio, 10.5 to 1 as opposed to 9.7 to 1, and power is bumped up to 180 horsepower. Redline is now up to 7100 over last year's 6500. Some minor interior changes were made, which included changing the multi-display screen background to blue instead of black, and EXL models now came with dual zone automatic climate control. The SE trim came back for the final 2011 model year, but it wasn't a higher end model this time like before. In fact, it was somewhat of a lower trim now, in between the LX and EX trims. Basically just an LX with a few of the EX options. The 3rd gen CRV is good reliable transportation and would make a great practical daily for any small family. To be honest, it's somewhat hard to find faults with, unless you compare it to the previous generations. I just can't help but find it a little disappointing that they got rid of pretty much all the cool features that made the original generation so cool and unique. On its own, the 3rd gen stands out as a great small family crossover, but I'll always think of the first 2 generations as the GOAT CRVs.
Ed Rooney's office.
Hi, this is Ferris Bueller. Can I speak to Mr. Rooney, please?
I'm calling the studio, Matthew. You're not shooting today. Just get some rest.
Diva. He bought it. One of the worst performances of my career, and he never doubted it for a second.
That's a lot of fish.
Hi, can I get my CRV brought up, please?
Broderick.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Get going in the all-new CRV from Honda.
It's 2012. iPhones are starting to win out over Blackberries, and suddenly everyone wants to know what sound a Fox makes. Well, I don't know what the Fox says, but I'll tell you what the new CRV says. From the outside, the new CRV looks not that different. It's a pretty natural evolution from the 3rd gen. It's acceptable, but forgettable. The inside has been pretty drastically redesigned though. The driver is pretty much walled off from the passenger now. We've moved well away from the open concept these interiors used to have, which Honda used to advertise as one of the benefits of front-wheel drive. The new dash layout leaves the gear selector and climate controls in a pretty similar location as last year, and the radio or optional navigation system resides above that. Above that is a new little display screen that shows basic things like song information and a very low-res backup camera. The gauges now feature a large speedometer monitor in the center with a round screen in the middle that shows the odometer, trip meters, outside temp, fuel economy, and some other basic settings. A tach hangs out on the left side and analog fuel and temp gauges reside to the right. The new steering wheel, unless you have the leather interior, I have to say is made from some of the cheapest feeling plastic I have ever felt in a car. Trims are again LX, EX, and EXL. Over LX, EX adds alloy wheels, a moonroof, body-colored mirrors and door handles, fog light, a 6-speaker audio system, and a retractable cargo cover. EXL adds leather interior with heated front seats, heated mirrors, automatic headlights, automatic climate control, a 10-way power adjustable driver's seat, and like last year, navigation was available on this trim as an additional option package. It was basically the same navigation system from the previous generation, you know, the one that's incapable of displaying any dates after 2021 and now thinks it's 2003.
I left the best of me in 2003.
The 60/40 rear seats don't flip up and forward anymore like previous generations, but they still fold almost flat at least. The transmission is again a 5-speed auto, which is definitely geared for efficiency and not power. The engine is another 2.4 liter K series, the K24Z7, which makes 185 horsepower and 163 pound-feet of torque. It's a decent engine, but it does have a few trouble spots. Straight from the factory, these things had issues with the VTC actuator, where they would rattle on cold start like this. This is because the actuator doesn't have any oil into it until oil pressure is built, and this little spring inside it gets messed up. Back in the day when these were new, we used to replace these under warranty with an updated part, and that would fix the issue for a while at least. But now 10 to 12 years on, it's become very common for these to fail again. And now that they're older, in my experience, you can't often just get away with doing the VTC anymore, because by the time the customers bring these in to get fixed, all the plastic chain guides are often broken from the sloppy chain rattling around. And at that point, the vehicle needs a full timing chain job, and if you ignore it, it will eventually jump a tooth or two out of timing, and then you have real problems. I highly recommend checking out this video by the Offroading mechanic if you want to learn more about this. He explains it really well in this video. Now, when these cars were new, this problem was rightfully blamed on faulty VTC actuators, but as these cars have aged, another dynamic has come into play, increasing the frequency of these failures and causing these issues to reoccur, sometimes even within months of having the actuator replaced. And that problem is lack of oil. In other words, lack of proper maintenance. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, these engines need good oil pressure to maintain proper tension on the chain. The problem is, as we know, Hondas like to burn oil as they get older, and this K-Series is no exception. If people would just keep their oil topped up, this wouldn't be a huge problem, but the demographic that buys these cars don't usually do that. Another big part of the problem is that the maintenance reminder on these cars is programmed to come on after like 8 to 10,000 kilometers depending on driving. So you can just about run out of oil before the idiot light comes on, and the maintenance reminder will still say something like 40 or 50% oil life, tricking people into a false sense of security. These maintenance intervals, in my opinion, are way too long, but all manufacturers are doing these long intervals nowadays so that they can advertise a lower yearly cost of maintenance. But nowadays, as these engines are racking up the miles, they can easily be down a liter or two or more of oil after 8,000 kilometers. So the lesson here is, if you're gonna own one of these in 2025, you need to be on top of checking and topping up your oil. Sir, you've gone 16,000 miles without an oil change. You're gonna need to do them a little more often. How dare you! I have 10 Google accounts and I'm gonna write a bad review about you from all of them. That's a lot of Google accounts. Maybe if he had stopped at 80, he would have had time to check his oil. The 2015 model year brought a pretty significant mid-run update. The headlights were now trimmed with new LED daytime running lights, which flowed nicely into the new grille design. There's a new front bumper with different fog lights, and take a look at the grille. See? It's those honeycombs again. I told you that's what they do. The updates to the rear are less drastic, but still an improvement, sporting a new rear bumper and some added faux chrome to at least give the illusion of being a little higher end. On the inside, they've added rear climate vents, and overall build quality of the interior does feel at least somewhat improved. The new infotainment unit is a much more modern touchscreen interface, but it's lost its physical volume knob, as most Honda models did around this time, which caused outcries from owners and reviewers everywhere for years until Honda started adding them back. A fourth touring trim level has been added above the EXL, which adds Honda's new driver's assist features, forward collision warning, collision mitigation braking, lane departure warning, and adaptive adaptive cruise control. The 2.4-liter K-Series now uses a direct injection fueling system and is part of Honda's new Earth Dreams engine family. Horsepower remains at 185, but torque is up significantly to 181. The new Earth Dreams engine has the exhaust manifold on the front and the intake on the back, which is the opposite layout of the pre-refresh engines. Yes, they still have the same VTC actuator timing chain issues. There's a completely new transmission, now it's CVT.
As if.
Hey Shannon, check out my new CRV. Oh, you're not here. Shannon, not again. See what happens when you Pokemon Go and drive? You know, if this is going to be the running gag of this video, I should probably just avoid this street. Overall, the 4th gen isn't terrible, but it's a bit of a step backwards in build quality in my opinion, and there's really nothing that stands out about it to me. It's just a generic SUV, nothing fancy, but it'll work fine if you maintain it. It's very mediocre, very average. Definitely the Matthew Broderick of SUVs.
That's a lot of fish.
For 2017, the freshly redesigned CRV enters its 5th generation. Built off the new 10th gen Civic platform, this CRV has grown slightly with a wheelbase increase of 1.2 inches and a width and height increase of 1.4. They are pretty roomy on the inside and the seats fold down nearly perfectly flat, but I couldn't help but notice that bikes can't be loaded without removing that front wheel anymore. Still, for 90% of customers, the cargo room in these should be more than adequate. There are 4 trim levels: LX, EX, EXL, and Touring. For US models, all but the LX trim use Honda's new L Series 1.5-liter turbo. This little turbo engine makes 190 horsepower and 179 pound-feet of torque. Not really all that different from the numbers of the previous generation's K24 engine, which is carried over in the LX model. And the only model I would even consider for this generation, because I wouldn't touch that L15 turbo with a 10-foot pole. I'm sorry, I know some people like these, but they're just not very good.
Oh, that is a vile and odious lie! How dare you fill my head with such loathsome propaganda!
If you like this engine, that's cool, to each his own. They are certainly more efficient than previous engines, but they've traded off a lot of reliability to achieve that. Anything around 150,000 miles or more on these engines is getting into blown head gasket territory. In fact, it's gotten to the point that when I call our local machine shop to sublet out a cylinder head, they just ask me, so D17 or L15? Now, if you previously owned a 4th gen and were annoyed at how often you had to top up the oil, you'll be pleased to know that the L15 engines, if anything, usually read high on the dipstick. They top up their own oil with fuel. Canadian models are a little bit different. The K24 was not carried over, and the L15 is the only engine option on all trims. All-wheel drive is also standard in Canada on all trims except LX, whereas it's an option package on all US trims. The only transmission available on all models is CVT. Over LX models, the EX trim adds Honda's suite of driver's assist features, automatic headlights, a power moonroof, body-colored door handles, push-button start, heated front seats, a cargo cover, a walk-away auto-lock function, and an upgraded sound system. There's even a driver's attention monitor, which gives an attention score of a maximum of 4 bars, like it's some sort of video game. Well, that is a creative way to get people's attention, I guess, simulating playing a video game. At the end of your drive, you can get an eco score too. Ooh, bonus points. I wonder what cool prizes consistently good eco scores unlock. Oh, well, that's not a very good prize. EXL adds, as you could probably guess, leather interior, a power tailgate, an automatic dimming rearview mirror, and Honda's HomeLink remote system. The sound system is upgraded from a 6-speaker to an 8-speaker system, and navigation is also an available option on this trim. The Touring model adds Navi as standard, gives you a 9-speaker premium audio system, a hands-free tailgate with a kick sensor that barely works, dual chrome tip exhaust, standard roof rails, LED headlights with auto high beams, and rain-sensing windshield wipers. Because it's 2017, and we certainly can't be pressing a switch like a common peasant to turn that stuff on manually anymore. US models didn't get this for some reason, but on Canadian models, Touring trims got this panoramic moonroof, which is really nice, but unfortunately the sunshade for it is very cheaply made and often binds up and can't be closed. On the inside, the digital gauges are similar to Civic gauges. Wood grain is added to make the interior feel a little more upscale on the upper trims, and the EXL and Touring trims do have decent interiors. I do like this white leather color combo, although I imagine it's pretty impractical. The new infotainment unit has a nice sized screen and thankfully has a volume knob added back. How does the system work? Well, it usually doesn't. The 2019 model year was the mid-run update, and the big news for the US market was the addition of a hybrid model. The 2.4-liter engine in the LX was dropped, and all trim levels could now either be had with the L15 Turbo or the new hybrid powertrain, which was a dual overhead cam 2-liter paired with an electric motor for a combined output of 212 horsepower. We didn't get this engine in Canada though, as we didn't get a hybrid version for this generation, so I'll leave it up to you guys to tell me in the comments if this powertrain is any good or not. For Canadian models, the L15 remains the only engine option. In Canada, a black edition trim was added above Touring, but it's just a Touring model with special black rims, black edition seats and floor mats, and black wood grain. Exterior revisions include a new front bumper, a new grille with more black instead of chrome, and a slightly different rear bumper. They also added a little bit more wood grain to the interior, trimming out the revised center console. Most of the Honda Sensing driver's aid features are now standard across all models. Now I know I've been a little harsh on these, but that's only because they're not very good. But in all seriousness, let me know in the comments if you agree or if you disagree and you really like these. And if you've owned one or do own one, let me know what your ownership experience has been like. Alright, one more generation to go. Buckle up.
Hey there! Nice fancy CRV you got. Looks like you've had a blowout. Need a hand putting on your spare?
Well, that's the problem. This is a hybrid and it doesn't come with a spare.
No spare?
No. Evidently that's where the hybrid battery goes. There's an inflator kit, but with a fist-sized hole blowing out my sidewall, it's not going to do me any good.
Oh, so you just gotta wait here until roadside comes to tow you to the nearest dealer and waste the whole day of your family's vacation?
Yeah, that's how it's gonna go.
Well, see ya. Off to Wally World we go. See, kids? That's one less family we'll have to wait behind in line. Who's laughing at Dad's family truckster now?
So let's start off with the styling. While the front end is Honda's new generic corporate grille, I do think the styling overall is a little better. The new taillights look better, and vision is actually slightly improved over the previous generation, mostly thanks to narrower A-pillars. Overall length is increased by about 2.7 inches, with a wheelbase increase of 1.6. The interior is pretty much exactly the same as the new Civic interior, save for a little bit of a different center console. I know Civics and CRVs have always shared a platform and lots of parts, but I mean, come on, can't the interiors at least be a little bit unique? I really miss the days when each model, while they did share components, had their own unique interiors. At least the dash always used to be different. Once you move past that though, I do think the quality and design of the interior is actually improved over last year. The honeycomb grille is on the inside now. The climate controls are 3 simple dials and are not integrated into the infotainment unit. These are the kind of climate controls I like, and credit where credit's due, just like in the new Civic and Accord, these controls actually have a very high quality feel to them. I also think it's cool how the inside of the center knob is actually a little display screen which shows your fan speed. I don't really care for the gauges though, because only the speedo is an actual gauge, the other is just a screen.
Pipe down, boomer. It's 2025. No one uses gauges anymore. Display screens are customizable and way better.
On hybrid models, these steering wheel mounted paddles adjust the amount of regenerative braking, which is definitely a better use for these switches over the previous generation where they were used for paddle shifters for the CVT transmission. You heard that sentence correct. The all-new infotainment system can come with either a 7 or a 9-inch screen depending on trim, and it does at least seem to work better than this. Trims are kind of all over the place now. They seem to change from year to year and are rather different between the US and Canada. In the US, LX, EX, and EXL all use the 1.5 liter turbo carried over from the last generation. Then there's a Sport trim, a Sport L, which I'm assuming is Sport with leather, and a Sport Touring. All of the Sport trims use a 2 liter hybrid powertrain with a combined output of 204 and 247. But then if you look at the Canadian trims, for 23 and 24, the Sport is a lower trim in between the LX and EX, and it uses the L15. Then there's an EXL that can come with either the L15 or the hybrid, and only the Touring trim is hybrid only. But then in 2025, the L15 EXL is dropped, and now both the EX and Touring trims are hybrid only, and LX and Sport use the L15. I think Honda is just trying to slowly weed out all the non-hybrid powertrains, and are probably taking into account the buying habits of different markets as they do it. I assume the next generation will likely be hybrid only, as Honda has stated they plan for all their models to either be hybrid or EV powered by 2030. Unfortunately, this generation has not gotten off to a very promising start in terms of reliability. I complained about the last generation blowing head gaskets. Well, these ones are doing it too, but this time it's the hybrids, and some of them aren't even making it to the first oil change. I've literally seen head gaskets go on these, one at 12,000 kilometers and another one at 6,000. Fuel injectors remain an issue on these as well, again with many of them failing before the first oil change interval. I mean, come on Honda, you know how to do better than this. The sad thing is, Consumer Reports can still rate them as above average for reliability because new cars in general are so unreliable now that the bar has been set really low. Apparently reliability ratings are done on a bell curve now. But I am starting to wonder just how much longer Honda is going to be able to keep up its reputation for reliability if they keep building cars like this. Eventually buyers are going to get frustrated with their declining build quality and outrageous maintenance pricing. Or maybe I'm wrong and they won't. Cars are becoming more and more disposable. Buy one, drive it for a couple years, then trade it in when it's out of warranty, and people just seem to be accepting that. And manufacturers like it that way because it means you always have a car payment. That'll do it for today's video. My favorite CRV generation is definitely the first gen, but let me know what yours is down in the comments.
You're still here? Do you have anything better to do?